Okay, welcome to the June 8th Environmental Advisory Council meeting. First order of business will be review and approval of the May 11th meeting minutes. So somebody want to make a motion to approve them?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the May 11th meeting minutes.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand.
Oh.
Okay, they're approved. I will send them on to Katie in the township building. All right, second item is future tree planting locations. As we all know, the AC sent a April 14th letter to the Board of Supervisors making several tree-related recommendations. 6 different sites we recommended. And we also recommended that they formulate a new long-range tree planting plan similar to the 2016 plan. So Jim and I were at the Board of Supervisor meeting last night, and then we followed that up with a meeting at the township building with the manager, township manager, and who was there? Monica was there, Jim Majewski.
Oh yeah, Derek Fuller, the new head of maintenance, Monica Tierney, Dan McClune, who was the planner, Jim Majewski, Dave Kratzer. I think that was it, and you and me.
Yeah. So between those 2 meetings, it looks like, what is it? We're going to plant 162 trees and split among Memorial Park, East Side, the Keola ball fields, and the Fred Allen softball fields. Correct?
That's the number. The original number was 373 trees. And then I had a meeting, Alan was out of town, on the 6th with basically the same people we just talked about now. And we went through location by location, and we got several comments and several suggested changes, which for the most part made a lot of sense. So the original list of 373 is now 162, and those locations are approved. So I think that's the main thing. So in the board supervisors meeting last night, and especially today, the direction initially was not clearly defined, but now it's very clearly defined. And what we're doing is that in the fall this year, we're going to plant 162 shade trees. Now, Alan, myself, and Linda are going to meet to select specific species, because that's what the board, or rather Dave, the manager, asked us to do. And once that's done, he's going to put it out for bid. And so the plantings, it looks like we're certainly going to have them done this fall. The second item is that we stress the need for another long-range tree plan. And as a result of that, what Dave is going to do is he's going to check with some outside consultants and find the right party to design a plan for us, and hopefully that will be done before the end of the year. And he's looking for good input from us, when I guess the plan is starting to be done. So I think on an overall basis, very positive. Not the number of trees we wanted initially, but we're not going away anywhere. We got plenty of money, and we're going to be planting a lot of trees in the future.
Yeah, so be thinking about sites where we can plant trees after this year. 3 of the sites we proposed in our April 14th letter were not weren't necessarily rejected, but were delayed for various reasons. I think there'll be trees at the golf course and at Patterson Farm eventually.
Alan, I think to your point, I think It's going to have to be for the golf course. It's going to be having to work with their landscape architect folks to make sure we don't, and being thoughtful about specific species so that root systems don't impact things. But I do think there's great opportunity there. I think we need to. Patterson Farm, there will be more opportunity. The ad hoc property committee wants to drive the bus on that, more kind of like the golf.
Yeah.
The golf managers want to drive the bus at the golf course. So there's a little bit of turf control there, I guess. And then I think Makefield will also be a great opportunity once we get through the Makefield plan. But again, Park and Rec set up that advisory committee. Sort of, Board of Supervisors didn't vote on who was on it and how they're doing it, but they set up a committee, and they'll at some point there will be input, because Makefield is essentially, if it's not in the floodplain, it's close to the floodplain, and it's super wet in certain areas. And it, quite honestly, the neighbors want more trees there for more screening, and I think it would benefit Makefield to begin just anyhow from use perspective to suck up some of that water. I think we'll also have a great opportunity for additional trees like we were talking about last night at Memorial Park in different areas, in various areas. Not only the the head, sort of the row of trees along the street, but some back in there to supplement. And I think other areas, last night, not part of the tree planting plan, but we were looking at, after you all left, Andy, our township engineer, gave a presentation on the pollution reduction plan, and there will be probably several hundred trees going in at Charles Bay Middle School, riparian zone trees along the creek there as part of the stream bank restoration. So they're not using tree bank funds, but it's tree plantings in the township for township related project, even though it's on a school district property. So we're seeing some good stuff, and we have a lot of additional opportunities to add some more trees for similar projects there. We also spoke about adding more trees as part of this pollution reduction plan to retrofitted basins. So again, that won't be using tree bank funding, but there will be opportunity for, again, probably several hundred more trees just in basins as we look to retrofit them. And yes, I did bring up naturalization. I did put it out there for you guys. So we're looking at that too. So I think we have a lot of opportunity for more tree plantings. Jim, you brought up when you were looking at the one site last night, you brought up a good point about farmland preservation lands. I do think I understand the current approach to 100%. I do think that's probably an avenue we should go down to talk to farmland preservation about where there might be opportunities to plant trees, especially around streams and low-lying areas. I think historically, one of the main reasons we have impaired streams in Pennsylvania is historic agriculture, just poor agricultural practices, even more so than residential developments. So I do think we should be thoughtful about that and see what we can't do to potentially get them to work with the EAC to develop some tree planting plans specific to stream corridors, riparian zones on farmland preservation lands, just not in areas where they probably can't cultivate anyway, but we want to be able to address potential runoff issues before it gets to the stream. And then, we all know how important riparian zones are. I think, Jim, you spoke about it last night a little bit. So I think in addition to the good stuff you've all been doing the last several years now, and what's coming up this year, I think we have some good opportunities to keep using that tree bank money to have even greater effect. So that's a long-winded way of saying thanks for everything you're doing, but also trying to fire you up to keep going. Keep going.
Yeah,
with
well, thanks a lot for your input, Dan. There's one other thing we should mention too. When we had the meeting today up at the township building to discuss, well, it was basically an informational meeting to talk to Dave about, the open space plan and basin naturalizations and kind of bring them up to date on, the past history there.
Yeah.
But after the meeting, I forget what's Mike's last name, the fellow from the golf course was coming in, and Dave said, well, look, Alan and Jim, why don't you hang around? And we were pretty impressed with the guy because we sat down with the big schematic of the golf course, and he started going around, and I told him that initially, we were thinking about here or there, but for some reasons, that's not going to be done now. And he said, well, I have some ideas, and he pointed out a whole bunch of other areas. And I said, well, look, you're the guy who knows about the course. You're the person who really knows the best place for trees on the course. And he's committed. He wants to put a lot of trees on the course. Well, as part of the long-range plan that we're hopefully going to have, maybe in a month or two, and Dave Kratzer is going to be checking some consultants that he thinks might be appropriate to come up with a long-range plan. So my idea was, and of course it would work that way, is the consultant would talk to Mike, they would go over the golf course, and the two of them would, come up with appropriate selections that Mike thinks are in the best interest of the course. And they might even want some input from us as well, So I think everything right now is, as far as that's concerned, is going pretty positive.
Good. Yeah,
And
I would, Mike Katera is who you're talking about. I would actually almost require that the golf course folks have the EAC input on any tree planting plan that goes there, because there's, as we know, there's been a tendency these last few years to look for non-natives and others for certain reasons, and golf courses are notorious for that. So we just want to make sure that they are picking the right trees for the right reasons.
Yeah, well, the consultant will be given specific information on any of these that he has a certain, let's say, roster or list of trees that he can use, and they're all detailed in our native plant ordinance. So hopefully that's not going to be any issue.
yeah.
Agreed.
And Monica
Agreed.
was at the meeting, and she thought that they would be putting in trees in their master plan they're working on. So hopefully trees can get to Makefield through that mechanism. Maybe they.
Yeah, I just don't know that they have the people on them.
Well, we can include it.
That needs to be vetted. I'll leave it at that. Anything that Makefield needs to be vetted.
Yeah. It could be in the new long-range plan. Figure it out from that.
Yep.
So yeah, lots of tree activity. So moving ahead with those. Anything else on trees? Good with that. All right. Next is recycling. We'll be having our traditional fall recycling event. I don't know if anybody's has a date in mind. I was just thinking we had the last year's on October 29th, which is a Saturday. This year, October 28th is a Saturday. So tentatively, we'll go with October 28th, the pre-Halloween recycling collection. And, but we won't finalize that date till maybe August. But that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good time of year to have this, Alan. And I think even though it might not be set in concrete, we should put a date down. Yeah.
Well, you want to wait a month or two, because we'll let the guy from Lions Club know, because he can get us volunteers and all that.
Well, let's just put the date down, and if the volunteers can't make it that, well, we'll just shift it around, because again, it's written in pencil, not ink.
Okay. Yeah, but maybe I'll contact the Lions Club in like August and let them know about it. That'll give them a couple months.
Sure.
Get ready. And rent the U-Haul truck, all that fun stuff. All right, recycling in LMT schools. Anything new, Kevin?
Yeah, I did communicate with Gary Sanderson about one thing that they have been doing is as a district was putting their recycling in plastic bags, which kind of nullified the recycling. So they're getting away from that, um, getting away from bags. And then I mentioned to them the possibility of using compostable bags for their trash. So they're going to look into that.
Good.
But other than that, I haven't heard anything.
So are you having meetings or you just send emails to?
The last meeting we had was the end of February, and I'm not sure when or if there's going to be another one. I think the district is handling a lot of just like mobilizing the resources, but they're not really. They're kind of just bringing us in the loop every couple months. So it's not really stuff that we have to do.
All right. All right, well, at least they're doing something.
Yeah.
Seems like a little progress. All right, our 2023 recycling guide. I asked Matt if he would be the manager for it because there are changes made over time. Places start adding recycle, some places quit recycling. And so it does have to be updated from time to time. Hopefully he'll do it. He hasn't gotten back to me yet on that suggestion. So number 4, the requiring open space in residential development applications, that went out for advertisement. It was voted on, I guess June. When was it voted on?
I think it was May 31st.
May 31st. Yeah, I got the wrong date here. I thought that was wrong. So I haven't seen a copy of it. Do you know where you can get a copy, Dan? Should I just contact Jim Majewski? I didn't see it on the website.
He didn't put it up there? Yeah, that's the most official way to do it. I thought he
Yeah.
might have.
They usually do that. Guess I should ask him.
And Dan, maybe you can give a little clarification on this, or Alan. What I'm thinking, it says required open space residential for development zoning. Now, this to me is very similar to clustering, but like clustering on an incremental basis. Is that how this is supposed to work with let's say you're looking at a 10-acre plot, and there's no problems putting 10 houses on it. That's what the standards allow. Now, under this plan, are we still going to allow the 10, but they have to cluster a little, and we're going to end up with some degree of open space? Is that how it's working?
I think it's 25% of the property. It's like clustering light,
They can't do townhomes, but they have to have minimum 25% as preserved open space of some type. Now, the big question here, Jim, is so a lot of the language, I mean, just terminology, not the definitions, but the terminology used, like open space, for example, is actually defined in the saldo, not in zoning. So we also have to, and I would hope that the EAC gets a crack at this too. We also have to look at updating some of our definitions in the saldo that then feed back into the zoning ordinance. For example, open space right now is kind of a huge umbrella. So we're going to have to update the saldo to clearly define what open space is going to be. There's other terms, but that's one obviously that sticks out. And let's say you have a 100-acre site that has 25 acres of woodlands that have to be preserved. Not because of the open space ordinance, just because of woodlands needing to be preserved, or wetlands, or something else needs to be preserved. As it's written now, you can kind of double dip. So if you have to preserve the land anyway, because it's a regulated resource that can't be developed on, you'll get credit for open space that way too. I was preferring to try and see if we couldn't bump that up somehow, but legal was telling us probably couldn't push that. When it comes to clustering though, like Alan said, it is clustering light. It's not, you won't be able to do, let's say, a big townhome development if you preserve half of, if you preserve 50 acres of 100 or 75 acres of 100, you're not going to be doing townhomes or something denser than that in the remaining space. You're still going to have single family homes for that type of, I think R1 is the development type, is the zone, and it's for properties over 10 acres. So it's going, it's going through the process. There's also one of the things that I was asking for that was in there. Planning Commission helped with this, was to make sure that there was an open space management plan developed as part of the initial process. So it wasn't just called open space and then, figure it out after the fact. We want that up front so we know what the open space is going to be and how it's going to be managed and who's responsible, et cetera, et cetera. Will it be given, will the township ultimately get it back? Will the HOA be responsible for it? Will some, some nonprofit land trust type entity take ownership, not ownership, but responsibility for it? So we want all that to be worked out at the beginning versus later on. So it's clear to everybody as we go down that road, what's going to happen.
Okay, yeah. I
have a question.
actually was the chair of the committee that created the LID ordinance. And that's where the clustering concept, if I remember correctly, came from initially. And I think it was a requirement that it be 50%. But, the more I think about that, if we could go back several years, my approach would be to have an incremental approach towards clustering, where you could do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I think the whole idea is to get some additional open space. And from a developer's viewpoint, he's still putting the same number of houses in. So anyway, that's just an aside. But
yeah,
this ordinance is doing actually part of that, I think.
It's sort of, it's like Alan said, it's clustering light. We are, and Sumi, I know you want to say something here in a second, but just so you are aware, as part of and the whole idea of clustering and changing development types so you can save open space while doing different types of development is sort of going back in the planning world 25 years when I was an undergrad. It's sort of a new urbanist approach. I've written many of these regulations in different states and when I worked at the TVRPC and when I was in grad school to push a little more towards cluster development, a little more towards TOD, transit-oriented development, where it makes sense, around transportation oriented areas, a little bit of the traditional neighborhood development. It's all sort of a mix. Where it makes sense. So we're not putting in commercial in the R1. That's not what this is for. And we're not trying to make new mini, live, work, play areas in the R1, even though that might be an option at some point. But we are trying to make it so someone doesn't come in with 100 acres, but 100 lots and just make it a cookie cutter and clear every tree that they can and move on. That's not in the best interest of the township. And on top of that, I'll leave it with this. As looking at our ordinances, our zoning historically, is basically Lower Makefield zoning historically before we had things like low impact development and the other ordinances that this group has worked on so hard over the years, was really typical zoning for suburban sprawl type of town. An exurb that developed to just be a bedroom community, and it's lots of different developments with no sidewalks and large lots and large homes. Got to drive everywhere, large footprints, all that stuff, which makes it very hard long term to manage. Manage and upkeep from a stormwater management perspective. Lots more impervious area, lots more runoff, all that stuff, and just a general, not the quality of life that we typically love. Not very walkable, not easy to get to the stores that you like and all that stuff. So we're going to generally take a look at our zoning ordinances to see, for the areas we have left, how can we improve upon that so that we can make things as make things better, and if there's areas where redevelopment may occur in the future to see, make sure that the township has some sort of say in how that gets done to the extent that we can.
Dan, I have a question.
Sure.
So is there any language in the proposed changes to incentivize contiguity between two lots or bunch of lots?
Sort of. I think that's, I can't point to specific language in front of me here, but that's part of the goal, to do that so that we can, not to call it clustering, but to make sure that the way it's done, and it's not perfect, I'll say that. The way it's done though is through making the open space have to be more contiguous. So by in doing that, it
that's what I meant.
prevents, yeah. It's not making the lots where development's going to occur contiguous per se. It's making the open space be contiguous. Therefore, the lots being developed have to be contiguous, because you can't place them piecemeal throughout and just call every little patch of grass open space and add it up over time.
Yeah, no, I meant contiguity of open space. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Good.
Good question.
Yeah, while we're on that topic, by the way, I agree with you as far as farmland preservation is concerned. You know, farmers have a totally different approach about planting trees, but we always leave our bridges open. And that was an excellent point you brought up, Dan, about on some of these farms, there might be some riparian areas that really need protecting. So down the road, who knows? Maybe we'll end up with some significant plantings there. And we have right now good communication, open communication with Dennis Stedman, who is the farmland chair. The other thing I was talking to Alan about recently is in farmland preservation, I'm just wondering from a legal viewpoint, if we can make farmland preservation mandatory, which would work something like this. You have a 100-acre farm, okay? And you have to, let's say, use farmland preservation for either 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50%. And the developer, would have, the right to select whatever increment is. So I'm not sure. That's something, the next time I talk to Dave Truelove, I just might want to run by him because we still have several farms left in the township, and it would be kind of nice if that could happen. Now, we had a site visit for the Torbert farm, and it's clearly evident there that if there could be a little farmland preservation, maybe even, let's say, 10 acres or so along the road, I guess that's Yardley Newtown Road, is it? It would really, really be in the interest of the development, because the houses would all be shielded. The approach when people went by would be, not looking at, another 80 houses, whatever. So, like I said, the next time I see Dave, I'm just going to throw that question by him and see what he thinks. Yeah,
and I think when we think about what farming is, right, and what the needs of a farmer are, it can be real unless you need a fair amount of land in active agriculture to make it usable and functional as a farm, rather than, let's say, a big garden or just because to produce enough to make it economically viable for a farmer to do something. And that's given its that particular farm, given its proximity to Patterson Farm, I think if we can get, I'd love to see more than 10 acres, but I'm picking up what you're laying down there. If we can pick up any land there, since it is in proximity to Patterson Farm, it might be a good opportunity to, combine a lease or something like that for the farmer at Patterson Farm, just to cross the street and keep that way. It's easier to make sure that Torbert Farm, if that was an option, could continue to be farmed, rather than have a separate farmer who would have to travel from somewhere else, try and farm a relatively small patch of land for a farm, because most farms aren't really viable until you get up in the 300-400 acre size. You can't even get I don't think you can get it in the ag security program unless it's at least 500 acres, for example. So that's something we also need to be thoughtful about as we look to keep our farms as farms, to make sure that, you know, when we're paying for farmland preservation, that it's something that can be maintained over the long term. Like the Guzikowski farm a few years back, that was only 40 acres. They paid a hefty sum for it, for an easement, but only 40 acres is really tough to maintain as a farm long term. After, when the next owner comes around, it's going to be really difficult for them to farm that land unless it's connected, unless they have other land close by that they're also farming to kind of pull together. But that's an aside. So.
All right, Dan, when do you think this will go before the board? July, August?
Probably July. Well, it's going to be advertised for what, 30 days or so?
Yeah, so
We're probably looking at July.
Okay, so we're gonna comment on it. We need to get our comments in the next 30 days or so.
Or soon, yeah. And if the comments are substantive, they'll have to re-advertise. And that's fine. I'd rather have a better ordinance. And then, because look, the Torbert farm has already put in their site plan, so this ordinance doesn't apply to them.
Right.
Right? They have a by right plan, for better or worse. They have a by right plan that they can push through. It has to go through Sal though and meet all those requirements. From a zoning perspective, they don't need any variances, from what I understand. So getting this advertised doesn't affect them. They could choose to revise their plan and go through this, use the spirit of this ordinance to do something. So this one impacts future developments, let's say at Grey Nun or something like that. We know that one has been shopping around for developments, or some other places of that size. So it's important that we move forward with this, but we also want to have a good ordinance in place.
Yeah, Jim Majewski said that Grey Nun is moving forward. We'll probably see something from them this year. Development plan, unfortunately.
Yeah, I haven't heard a ton about that, so I'll be interested.
Yeah, I guess Ed Murphy has been contacting him, so it'll be great.
Yeah. And speaking of trees and developments, did everyone see the 1101 Big Oak Road discussion? Yeah, you made the good fight, Dan. You tried, I tell you. I don't know what the others are thinking about the arborist report. Yeah. Yeah, I very disappointed in that. Yeah. So one of the arguments made, which for removing the trees, was to allow new trees to grow. And what they couldn't understand is that if you cut a big hole in the middle of a forest, this is after the report said that the trees in the middle were being protected by the trees on the outside. So there's contradiction there. Yeah. But they tried to make the argument that cutting down trees in the forest would allow new trees to grow. Whereas we all know that when you cut down those trees and you leave all that edge habitat, all you're going to get is invasives for years, and it's going to make it that much worse. Yeah. So the attorney and the engineer didn't seem to grasp that, and he couldn't imagine that I would ever, anyone would ever disagree with an arborist about trees. But it is what it is. So I appreciate the efforts of this group. Absolutely. So keep it up, and I'll continue to back you guys up when it comes up.
Thanks a lot for your input, Dan. And this was a real learning experience for us too. We're still, quite upset that one of the EAC members was not invited, to those inspections. We have some decent expertise on board, and now I'm not suggesting there was any hanky-panky or anything else, but another set of eyes with the environment in mind, I think, would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed, and your letter, the AAC's letter was thoughtful, because when I read the arborist reports, all of them, I don't believe that they even mention our tree ordinance at all. the requirements of our tree ordinance. They came up with their own requirements for what trees should be removed and shouldn't be removed, and didn't even address the I'll call it the hierarchy of need, the requirements of our tree ordinance, nor did it even, it started talking about woodlands, but it didn't even mention our woodlands ordinance and how we define a woodland. So I it I don't know. It was very frustrating to
Yeah.
to make those arguments and just be essentially shouted down by Ed Murphy's colleague. So,
Yeah,
but it's getting used to it at this point.
yeah. Mini Ed Murphy, I guess. So it was approved May 31st. I was surprised that they're not going to plant any replacement trees on site. I thought they'd plant some. They're going to put all the money in the tree bank. That was a little surprising.
And all the money is not, remember, they are not having to pay for 119
Right.
trees that they're cutting down. So
Yeah.
that goes from, I think they're paying 62,000 is the dollar number I have in my head. Whereas if something close to that 119 were required, they'd have to pay more than $300,000 in the
Yeah,
tree
I
bank.
think it would have been 38 more trees would have required replacement trees.
Yeah.
So, but that's a done deal. 1566 subdivision. I have nothing new, but I found out today that it's going to go before the board on your next meeting, June 21st. That's what Jim and
Okay.
Juicy said. So get ready for that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they are going to plant most of the trees on site, apparently, which is good. All right, the next two, Tolbert Farm Development and the Point at Edgewood Village, they're both going before the Planning Commission on Monday. And I sent out some comments on the Point. Is it okay if I send them on to Jim Majewski for the Planning Commission meeting? No problems? Okay. So,
Alan, do you want a motion and a vote to
Yes,
make
we have
those
yeah.
official, or do you already have that done?
nope, we don't have it done. Somebody want to make a motion to send the draft comments in on the Point?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to send in the draft comments.
Okay. Second, Sumya?
Second it.
Okay. All in favor of sending in the comments, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Kevin, how about you?
Yeah,
Kevin
aye.
there, or
Huh?
what happened to Kevin?
I don't know. Kevin?
Oh, there he is.
realized I had turned it up.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Before we get off that too, I was at the site visit of the Torbert farm, and it was kind of interesting. There are quite a few people there. But I guess the approach the Torberts are taking is that the property is not sold. They hired a developer to come up with a site plan. And the rationale for that is that this site plan, based upon our ordinance, will show the maximum number of houses that can be built on that site according to our ordinance. So then I guess the approach is when they send this, and hopefully they're looking for approval for this. So when they get approval for this, then they're going to sell the property. And I think it makes it more interesting for the developer, because the developer already knows that there has been a preliminary plan approved. So I think that's the approach that they're going to take. Hopefully the 78 trees are going to be considerably lower when everybody gets finished with this thing, but time will only tell.
So Jim, if they get an approval of a site plan as is, a developer does not have to come back and get that'll be their final site plan. Then it goes with the property, and a developer can develop as is. They do not have to go through the zoning process at all, or the site plan process at all, other than to get their saldo approval. So this plan goes with the property. It's not just a marketing tool. They're spending considerable amount of money to have it engineered. They didn't hire a developer, they hired an engineer to engineer it and get all the approvals to develop the plan so that those 78 houses can be built by a developer. So that essentially they're paying for what a developer would normally do. And then the developer doesn't have to do that. And there's more, reliability. Let's say there's less risk associated with the development of the property because it's already been approved with a site plan. Doesn't mean the developer has to build that site plan. They could come in with something else, but they have a guarantee that they can build those 78 homes for
Right.
$1 million plus a pop. So that's the real reason that they're doing it the way they are. It's not it's not, I don't want to call it a cartoon. It's not just a marketing tool. It's an actual, it affords them the ability to build something day one if they wanted to. That's the key there.
All right, but what if, for instance, the environmental council finds some, maybe reason that it doesn't, make sense to, build all those houses. There's some kind of restriction or what have you. And the other thing is when we had the site visit, the developer's attorney, he kind of indicated that this was a maximum site plan, and the inference was that maybe they wouldn't end up building that many. But from what you're saying, I guess makes sense. If the developer wants to, he probably could, but it also might not be in the developer's interest to put that many houses on the site as well.
Well, so once they have site plan approval, your input is essentially null.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
your input is during the site plan approval process. And by you, I mean the EAC. So
Right.
all of your formal comments and issues you may have will go during the typical planning commission review process. I don't know. Most developers, if they don't build fewer homes, because if they're getting $1.5 million per home or whatever it is that's estimated, they're going to build all of them. It's just more profit. You know what I mean? So, it is, how they build them, when they build them, when they sell them. That's their own. That's their business plan. But they're going to build as many homes as they can so they can maximize their profit. So if anyone's trying to make you think that, oh no, this is no big deal, they're not being fully transparent with you.
I guess the approach that I was thinking about was that if, let's for instance say they put 20 acres in farmland preservation and they still end up with the same number of houses. So there's significant less infrastructure, which is costly to the builder. And instead of having 1.25 acre lots, you have like 0.9 acre lots, which are still very, very big. So I guess that was one of the concepts that I was thinking about.
So that would have to be worked out during the site plan process before it ever goes to some new developer. That whole approach would have to be worked out during the site plan process, because that's how they're subdividing. They're going to right now it's just one big lot. Maybe there's two there, but essentially they're going to subdivide. This is a major subdivision plan, right?
Yep.
So they're going to have to subdivide it to the 78 lots or whatever they end up having. And that's what's going to be approved for building. And they're going to have their meets and bounds and property lines and corners and all that stuff. So whatever is approved for the site plan, that's it. That's what it is. Now, before they build anything, they could come back in for a site plan revision and change things, but they don't have to. So, and it would be, they don't, unless they thought there was a good economic reason to do it, most developers just won't do that. And, so that's why it's very important during the initial site plan process, when Ed Murphy comes before us, that we try to, work with them to figure out a better solution to what that site plan is, if we're going to preserve any part of Torbert Farm.
Okay, that makes sense. I got it, and we'll see what happened. We sent our comments in a couple of weeks ago, Alan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
May 12th.
All right, thanks for the info, Dan. It was, important.
So Jim, I want to buy that property, Tolbert Farms. How much is it? We found out today.
Yeah, and I
25 million.
I almost fell off the seat.
Yeah, 25 million. That's 250,000 an acre. That's wow.
Yeah, that's their asking price.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't
That's what
know
Jim
exactly
used-
yet, but I know that we could have purchased that property as open space about 10 years ago for $10 million.
We blew our chance. What do you say the grade nun academy was? He gave a figure 14 million.
No, he said
gave a
17 million.
17 million for grade nun. Wow. Astronomical. Okay, now we got the big event coming up on Saturday, our environmental lecture on monarch butterflies migration. So what do you need, Jim? You need people.
Basically, I need 5 volunteers. I think you've already volunteered, Alan, myself, my wife, Kevin, and Paul, I think is going to be there too. What about you, Sumia? Is that practical or not?
Yeah, I'll come.
Okay, all right. Now, if we could all be there at 9:30, to have at least 5 volunteers really makes it go a lot easier. The doors are going to open probably around maybe a little before 10. Alan and I scoped out the place tonight. I checked with the lecturer and Dave Kelleher, regarding the technical aspects of everything. Everything right now is smooth sailing. I also picked up the milkweed plants that we're going to give to the first 25 attendees today at Bowman's, and they really grew a whole bunch of healthy plants, for us. So I would say right now, everything is just the way it should be. And if there's any changes or anything, I'll let everybody know.
Okay, great. All right, number 7's newsletter, and Paul isn't here, so we'll move on to number 8, EAC webpage update project. Anything new, Sumya?
No, I have your notes. I haven't managed to look at it, but probably next week. I just have been busy with some work deadlines.
Okay, yeah. Katie will work with you on that, and we'll help you too if you need any help.
Yeah, sure. Can I just ask a question regarding the lecture on Sunday? I haven't seen anything on Facebook. I know that Jim sent an email asking for it, and somebody responded saying they will do it, but I personally didn't see any.
I didn't either.
But on the township Facebook page,
No,
is that what you're asking?
On the township page, normally they put it up.
I'm looking right now.
It should be there because Paul was going to do some of that, but mostly Katie McVan said that she would heavily publicize it. And this is actually the 3rd time she's supposedly going to publicize it. For the last 2 weeks, she's also sent out that information, not only on, the township web, but on Facebook and the township TV program and everything else.
Yeah, it was posted on May 31st. I'm looking at it right now. I'll share it to the LMT's a Great Place to Live page.
Sumya, could you put it on Lower Makefield as a great place to live?
Let me find it. It didn't pop up
I
for
just
me,
did
but
it, guys.
Okay, fine.
Oh, Lower Makefield.
Oh,
great
wait,
place to live?
it was
Good.
posted on June 4th. No, that's yeah. And actually that's been posted by Penn State Master Gardeners on
Okay.
June 4th. And you're right, Lower Makefield, we posted it on 25th May.
Okay, so it looks like we have pretty decent publicity then. And generally for, important lectures like this, we get pretty good attendance. The only problem that could result is Alan and I at the township building today counted 50 chairs. Now, when we had people like Mike McGrath and some other notables like Doug Tallamy, we had like 80 to 100 people. So I hope we're not victims of our own success, because if we are, there's going to be people standing in the back.
Where do they store the extra chairs? Do you know, Dan?
At the admin building or the
Yeah, this is at the township building, not at the community center.
I honestly, I don't know where they put them anymore. We'd have to ask. I would ask Katie or Kratzer tomorrow.
Okay, all right, yeah, I'm gonna be touching base with Katie anyway. I need to, pick up the check for our presenter, so, I'll ask her that question.
Okay, it's 7:01. Last section, odds and ends. One thing we haven't mentioned that we talked about today at the meeting with the township manager is open space. We talked about that quite a bit. And we came to the conclusion that maybe the township should have a ballot issue for open space bond. And for that to happen, it has to be, the supervisors have to approve an ordinance to have the ballot issue. And the county has to be told about it. I think it was 13 Tuesdays before the election, which is in early August. So Dave Kratzer wanted me to send him a letter saying how this could be done and some specifics. And we didn't decide on an amount. We were thinking, what was it, 5 to 10 maybe?
Yeah, $5 to $10 million was the amount.
They seemed in favor of that.
Yeah.
But Dan, what do you think?
Well, it's a.
Would it have any chance with the other board members?
Look,
mean-
so yeah, I think it would. I mean, we talk a lot about open space and how we want to preserve open space. And, you just threw out some numbers on Torbert Farm that you were told, and
Yeah.
and Gray Nun and all that. And look, the whole township budget is barely double that. The lower numbers, our township budget would be, trying to buy those two would be more than double our township budget.
Oh
is what
yeah,
we're trying to get at, right? So there's not an easy way to purchase open space these days. Significant amounts of open space, other than the use of bonds or through some sort of donation through or zoning that requires cluster development, or that requires open space. And getting 25% on 10-acre property doesn't give you a whole heck of a lot of open space, right? So if we want to purchase significant open space, it's going to take a significant amount of money. That's just the reality of the situation. The sewer sale is not going to allow for that, right? That's already getting spent on numerous things and needs to be protected over long term. That's the point that was what we're trying to do there. So you're not going to be able to pick up a Torbert Farm or a Gray Nun with sewer sale proceeds, in my personal opinion. So right. I think if we're going to do it, it's going to require, I don't know if 5 or 10 is going to be enough, to be honest, given what we're looking at. It might have to be more than that to make it reasonable, but that's a debate to have and a good discussion to have, that we need to be informed by the township manager and others about how much it would take to acquire a significant amount of open space. And I think the idea of another bond issue related to that is part of that discussion. I don't know if it's the ultimate answer. I'm being honest with you. I don't know if it's the ultimate answer, but I think it definitely has to be part of the discussion.
Yeah. I mean, there's properties in the township that wouldn't be as much because they have issues, wetlands or whatever, and we could pick up for cheaper. So it'd be probably smaller properties scattered around the township rather than 1 or 2 big ones.
Well, and I think those properties that do have issues are ultimately, yes, we may be able to pick them up for cheaper. But in some cases, we might not need to pick them up at all because they will never get developed. Look
at the house at Edgewood and right by the township building. What's the road that comes in there?
Talking about Mill?
The new house that's right on the corner there near the railroad track.
Yeah, on Sandy Run Road.
Sandy Run.
Oh, the really tight. Oh, yeah, where they got
they put them everywhere now. Yeah. So you can't really say that. Seems like.
Yeah, I think the issue is that we don't envision purchasing significant pieces of open space. we've already identified several that if we had like a bond issue of 10 to 15 million, we could really pick up. And I think what we're trying to do here is be realistic. In a perfect world, Dan, it would be great if we had 25 million to purchase the Torbert farm, but that's not going to happen.
Sorry, the 10 to 15
Dave,
is more reasonable than the 5 to 10 is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is more, would be more 15 as a discussion point, I think is more likely to get us some bang for our buck versus a 5 discussion point. So I'm just, when we set the range, 25 is probably too high, 15 is probably in that wheelhouse, 5 is probably too low. So I agree with you in concept. I'm just talking about what range we would have to float there. That's all.
All right, and also in line with that, Dave's suggestion would be to possibly have a consultant take a look and specifically pick some open space areas, because our plan is getting pretty old. Our plan was done in 2009. I think there's still some aspects of it that are worthwhile. Because of the prioritization that we did. But they were also talking about having a consultant do some work, and they figured that could be done at a relatively low cost. So that was, another approach. But I agree with you about $15 million. I think for $15 million, we could do some nice things all over the township. And one of the concepts of the 2009 plan to begin with was to pick up small properties in various neighborhoods to provide neighborhood green belts. And so that could be done with $15 million. I think we could do a lot of good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, I'll draft up a letter and send it around recommending a ballot issue be on the November election, and we'll see where it goes. All right, the Audubon, what?
One other thing too, in the meeting that we had today, we also touched on basin naturalization, and the town's going to take another look at that. That's a complicated issue, and it would probably take 10 or 15 minutes to discuss. The bottom line is that the program stopped for a while, but the new operations manager is going to take a look at the old program, try and determine what happened, and then see if there's any basins that really lend itself to this program moving forward. He thought the concept on an overall basis was very good.
Yeah, that's good. All right, Birdtown program, Jim, you were going to check with somebody named Connie.
Yeah, I've tried 2 or 3 times already with no results. However, I think I have one other source that I might be able to check on. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to probably do that this evening, because I just remembered. I think I have some files tucked away, on that program with some contact information for people. So, I'll let you know what I find.
Yeah, but I haven't heard anything from the Bird Box guy. I may send him an email to find out how he's doing. He's gonna be able to put up the new bird boxes in the township. All right, Matt's not here. Kevin, anything from Patterson Farm Ad Hoc Property Committee?
No, it's still pretty early on in the process.
Okay. Well, did you see our tree recommendation letter, the April 14th? We wanted to put some understory trees and bushes behind that maple row.
Okay.
And see if you can get them to agree to that as part of the plan, because there's never been farming there. It's just, grass.
Maintain lawn. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Oh, on Patterson Farm, they did do some initial soil testing around the buildings for lead and probably some other constituents. They haven't gotten the results back. It should be fairly soon, and that'll determine if they need to do additional testing based on the results that they get. They may have to expand a little bit, and once they've developed their area of impact, then we can look at a remediation approach to most likely removing the dirt and that's contaminated with lead, because that's the main issue, and then backfilling it. And once we get that done, then making it safe for any work that gets done at the property to improve the buildings, and also for human use around the building. So that should be coming up. Kevin, they'll probably mention that at your meeting in some level tonight, but really it's just Beth Sauvigny asked me about it at an Artists of Yardley event recently, and I just said, we're not trying to stop anything at Patterson Farm. We're just trying to make sure that it's safe to move forward at some point, that we address the issue and then move forward accordingly, and then it should be good. So hopefully it's just limited to a 15-20 foot footprint from the edge of the buildings, but we'll see what they find there. That should be coming up in the next 3-4 weeks.
It's all buildings?
Pretty much. Most of them were painted with lead paint or something else with lead, and over the years just flaked off, and it's been repainted with lead paint over and over again up until you couldn't do that anymore, right? And it's just continued to flake over the years and just into the surrounding area. So
All right.
just poor maintenance over time.
Yep, adds up.
Yep.
All right, last section, open discussion, anything?
Yeah, I have one thing that I'd like to discuss. In talking with tree plantings with Dave over the last couple of days, we touched base on some of the communities that have become tree cities. And I think Dave and probably the township as a whole might be very receptive to that designation. There are certain parameters that have to be met, and I don't think it's a real complicated issue. Well, I was wondering maybe if Sumya or Kevin would want to take a look at that, come up maybe at the next meeting with what are the parameters, what we would have to do to join, and put it on the agenda the next meeting. Sumya, are you and Kevin interested in doing something like that?
Yeah, but I just want to get through the website stuff first. I'm a little behind my commitments. Otherwise, yes, in principle, yeah, but I just want to clear my table, things on my plate first.
All right, so in the future.
Yeah.
Hey, really, Jim, when you were talking to Dave Kratzer, did you guys talk anything about the sustainable PA thing that he was moving forward with?
No, we didn't approach that discussion at all.
Okay, I could ask him what our status is on that.
Yeah.
All right, Sumya, if you really get, tied up, certainly, that's fine. I don't think there's a lot involved in this initially, just finding out what the requirements are, which might be, just checking with Tree City, getting some forms, that sort of thing. And, certain parameters like, tree planting has to be X percentage of the town's budget, that sort of thing. And if you could just, for the next meeting, just maybe bring those forms or send us those forms or whatever else, so everybody could take a look at them maybe before the meeting. But I think this would be, a nice designation for the town as well. And I think Dave was, very receptive when he talked about that. So
it is called the Tree City program?
Yeah, Tree City USA.
Okay.
And if you, Google put that on the internet, probably in 5 minutes, you'll be an expert.
Sure. I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it's 7:15. Should we call an end to our meeting? Somebody make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that, we end the meeting right now.
And can I say, I guess I can second it, right?
Yeah.
All right, I don't know when our July meeting is or August. I guess we'll find out next few weeks. Katie sends out a schedule.
Yeah, and generally it's always the second Thursday of the month. And I'm pretty, the last time I talked to her, I was telling her that, if we could cast that in concrete, that would generally be pretty good.
All right, well, we'll see. Hopefully you're
We'll
right.
see.
Yep. All right. So all in favor of ending the meeting? Kevin's got to get to, you got the farm or the Patterson farm meeting after this, Kevin?
Yes.
Wow. A busy night for you.
Yeah.
All
We'll
right.
get it all done one night though.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll see everybody on Saturday.
All right,
All right,
everybody have a nice evening.
all right.
Bye.
And
See y'all.